people started hitting me up, and I'm like, hey, what's going on? And I had a lot of support from the community that I had helped to support, came back to help to support me, which was really, really important. And I'm telling you, it meant a lot because I landed on my feet so quickly. I had some opportunities that really presented themselves, and I had to make some decisions at that time. And one of the opportunities was to join Brainstorm.
Hello, everyone. This is Jose Vega, and this is the Price of Art, where we interview professionals in their industry and we talk about money, success, about their work, and their artwork as well. And today we have Thomas Brillante. He's the co founder of Brainstorm Online, a platform for artists to learn about everything in the entertainment industry from storyboarding, 3D, illustration, concept art, and even the business of art. He's a vivid fisherman, and sometimes you can find him doing a little bit of freestyling. He's been helping artists find their way for over 20 years. Tomas, welcome to the show.
Hey man, thank you so much for having me, Jose. It's awesome to be here. Awesome to chop it up with you again. It's been a while, so it's good to
Yeah.
reconnect.
Man, I've been super excited about this because as we were talking earlier, we know each other for a couple of years now. I actually used to do classes from a Brainstorm where we actually technically met. But I was excited about this one because you have this side of things on the art community, which is sort of like the business side of things, and it's one of my main purposes for this sort of show to talk more about that side than the actual art, because I think that side of things is lacking in terms of like education, quote unquote. You can find tutorials about how to do stuff in Blender and Photoshop and all this stuff, in numerous quantities. But talking about the business side of things and money and how to navigate those areas, I think is very important. But tell us a little bit about that transition, because I know you do art. You like to dabble into those things. What's sort of like the transition from you to being artist to being the co-founder of the?
Yeah, man, that's a very long story. It's one that takes place, as you mentioned, like well over 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you have time, I don't mind. I'll spit some of the origin stories so you can hear some of it.
Of
But
course.
yeah, so like
Really good.
when I started out, like I was, like any other creative kid, loved to draw. Was drawing, everything from like ninjas and robots and all kinds of things, as a child growing up. And that's the one thing that was kind of a constant for me, as a child. I came from a neighborhood and, a family that didn't have a lot of money. But my grandmother worked at a manufacturing company. And back then they used to do this like dot matrix printers. And so she would come home with stacks of printer paper. And like literally that was like, hey, keep them occupied. And she'd give me a box of printer paper. I'd flip it over on the back and do drawings. And so
nice.
And just a love of like, kind of like nerd culture from when I was a kid and, growing up on the coolest cartoons, the coolest toys. And so it's like, inspiration was everywhere. We didn't have the internet pulling us and sliding us into different directions. So everything that was around me became inspiration. So I, really pushed to be creative. And, in elementary school, I wasn't the best artist, but I was one of the artists in my class. And I felt like, anytime there was a project, they would lean on me to do like the artwork for the project. And, you kind of get that role if you're an artist. And I thought that that's for sure what I wanted to do. And so for me, that was like the focus. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know exactly what it was going to be, but I knew I wanted to do something related to art. And so fast forward, through high school and all the crap that, happens in high school and whatnot. I got into my senior year and I was looking at different schools. And back then it was like Art Center, you had Cal Arts, Academy of Arts, and I think the Art Institute of Los Angeles had just opened up. And unrealistically, thinking, because again, you don't realize what it takes to invest in a school at an early age. And, not having anybody, my sister went to school, but she went on scholarship. She was very smart, so she's academic. So she was about 4 years ahead of me. And, again, high school years were a little weird, got involved in graffiti and hip hop and a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So, kind of got in trouble for some of that. And I don't think they had plans for me to really go to college, at least my mom and my dad. They were separated, but at the time, I don't think they set anything aside or even were prepared for that. And so when I told them I wanted to go to art school and I started looking at colleges and started coming home with the price tag of, 95,000 way back then, it was kind of very difficult to quantify and qualify. But I'll be real honest too. My artwork wasn't good enough to get into art center as a, high school senior. You don't know what you don't know until you find out.
Right.
And, I had applied many places and literally just kind of, felt defeated, because I wasn't getting into those schools. I ended up doing, some community college and oddly enough, ended up having to work in a sales capacity, at an early age. So like 17, 18 years old, I was pretty much supporting my household, supporting my mom at the time and my grandmother who lived with us still. And was doing it through sales and had met some tremendous people, got involved in software sales, which is completely unrelated, but like always had this nagging, burning feeling in the back of my mind that I wanted to get to art some way, somehow. And I recall I was working for a manufacturing company, just fast forward a few mistakes, a few jobs later. And I was working for this polyethylene manufacturing company, and it's a commodities-based product. We literally were writing orders for this stuff that was coming in. And this is boring stuff. I mean, it was the most boring job that you can have. It was me and this other individual that hated life. We worked in an office together and he was my boss. He was always gone. And I remember being so freaking miserable in my job. And I'm a spiritual guy and I prayed on it. And I'm like, hey, something's got to happen, God, give me a break here, throw me a bone, do something.
Yeah.
And I recall one lunch break, I was, going through the newspaper because that's what you used to have to do back then. So I was going through the newspaper looking for
places. That's so long ago, man.
I know, it's super old school. So the youngsters probably can't relate to this part of the story, but realistically, man, I found an opportunity. So there was this art school that was coming to Orange County and they were hiring for all positions. And so circled it and I'm like, okay, I'm going to fax in my resume. And it was just right then, after I kind of prayed on it, it was a really weird and corny thing, but I was sitting in my car and a leaf fell into my window and it was a green leaf and it wasn't a leaf that had blown off because of fall. It was a very healthy, vibrant leaf and it landed in my lap. And so for me, that was kind of like a sign, things might be changing.
Yeah.
I put in my resume, totally forgot. And about 3 weeks later, I got a call from the director of admissions and said, hey, we got your resume. We felt there was a lot of passion there. We'd love to have you come in and discuss, anything, a job. And at that point in time, I was over the moon. I'm like, you know what?
Anything.
It's an art school. It's the Art Institute, not my number one choice. But at the same time, I still thought they were high esteem because again, I didn't know what I didn't know back then.
Right.
And so went to go for an interview and basically told them, man, I will do anything I need to do in this place, whether it's sweep the bathrooms, if I'm able to attend classes and be a student here. And they were like, oh yeah, that can definitely happen, and we have this position, it's an entry-level position. And nonetheless, I started out there. I had worked in the admissions department in an admissions coordinator position and kind of worked my way up in the school. And, you start realizing certain things that once you get in that role, it's super busy and you don't have the time to take as many classes as you wish. You can't go to school full time and work 40 to 50 hours a week. It's very challenging. I mean, some people can do it. I wasn't cut of that fabric. So I was taking classes and I was plugging away, and I would take graphic design classes here and there. I would take animation classes, just little bits and pieces. And I was kind of a la carte, just kind of picking my education.
And
but
you were how old?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
How old you were during that time?
Ooh, so this was probably when I was about 20 or 21. So I was about 20 or 20.
So still very young.
Yeah, still very young. So to give you an idea, I'm 47 now. So that's some time. And I started really young there. And like I said, I was taking classes and being a few years removed from some of the students that were there, you start making friendships. And I recall some of the early students that I had encountered are still friends of mine today. Like Jason Shire was one of my early students early on.
Wow.
So I went there when he was there. I had met Anthony Jones when he was there, Caitlin Talk. So a lot of people and a lot of artists that came through that crappy school, but were there for either a short period of time and went and did something else. But because of my love for art and my connection to really understand what we were doing at that school, I was able to make some great relationships with people, and then kind of move on. Now, again, not to be boring with all the facts, but like, I think about five years went by, maybe a little bit more, and I ended up leaving there. So I was just like, okay, I'm not getting my degree. Like this time, I think I had gotten married at the time and had my first child on the way. So started that pretty young too, around 24. And so like now I'm like, okay, I need to be serious about like my career. Mm-hmm. And so I had left and went and explored another industry, and it was in software sales again, kind of what I had done previously. And it was just not for me. Again, I kind of found myself missing art and design. And I think about 6 months went by and I wanted to like go back. I was like, oh man, I made a mistake. Like I need to get back in the creative realm. Yeah. And I found out they were building a school out in the Inland Empire. And so that time, if you're not familiar with Southern California geography, it's a little bit outside of Los Angeles.
Okay.
I would say about 40 minutes outside of LA, about an hour away from Orange County. And me and my wife at the time, we were living in there. It's a suburb. It's much cheaper to live out there than it is to live in LA or Orange County.
Right.
So for me, when I found out they were opening the school in the Inland Empire, it was like, dude, it's throwing me a bone again. It's like, okay, new school. I left on good terms. I'm going to call them. And turns out my old director was the director at this new spot. So when I showed up, they're like, you're hired. I'm like, okay, awesome. So it was like breath of fresh air, and I started all over again. One of the things that I did is I became friends with a lot of the teachers and the academic department directors, because that's the core of what we do, right? Mm-hmm. And there was a director at the time. His name is Santosh Uman. We're still friends right now. He's an amazing artist in terms of like storyteller. He writes graphic novels. He's got all kinds of awesome stuff in development, but he's the most passionate person I know about the animation and story industry. And so that became infection. Like I would go and hang out in his office, multiple hours per day. Like they'd find me missing and they'd call up in Santosh's office, like, hey, Thomas, get back down to your desk. We need you. And so I spent a lot of time with Santosh, really just gelling and geeking out on all the new properties that were coming out. And then it became kind of a challenge between me and him, because I had a network that I had started developing back at Orange County. And we were thinking like, how can we make this art institute better than any other art institute? And so we started going into the files and trying to pull out people that can come out and do like maybe workshops or come out and teach. And we really took pride in that. Like we didn't want to be the run-of-the-mill school. We wanted to make sure that we were giving the students there as much bang for their buck. Even though it wasn't a concept art directed school, it was more production design. Right. We were bringing out, artists to do workshops. And we would like compete against each other. Like he ended up bringing out James Gurney, and I got mad. And so I'm like, all right, screw this, dude. Like I got on the phone and I tracked down Ian McCaig, and I got Ian McCaig to come out, And so it was like, we're getting these big name artists to come all the way out to San Bernardino, a suburb of, Los Angeles, and come out and do workshops. And they were free and open to the public. And
that's cool.
Yeah, so life happened. So basically, Santosh ended up leaving the school, and students were coming to me. They were coming to me going like, hey, dude, like, I don't know what we're going to do. Like, our leader's gone. I'm like, hey, guys, like, I'm still here. Like, I'm going to like help out as much as I can. And gracefully, again, relationships and people that I had met kind of really believed in the workshop thing that I was doing. But it was important for me at that time to make sure that if I'm going to do these workshops for the school, I have to figure out a way to brand it, to be able to get credit for the workshops. So it's not the school just hogging up the credit, like, hey, we did this, because it wasn't them. It was me and Santosh, primarily me at some point in time. And I don't want to be the guy that said, hey, you have to pat me on my back. It wasn't like, hey, workshop presented by Thomas, but I created a kind of a nonprofit organization without being a nonprofit organization. So I didn't do a 501(c), but I created at the time a
now, could you go into the 501(c) thing for the people that...
Yeah, so that's for somebody who's actually coming up and setting up a nonprofit organization. It takes setting up a status with the government and the IRS that you're an actual charitable organization, and it's X amount of money has to go back into your charity. So it's a great opportunity if you're looking to do something to give back for the community. So if you're looking to do, a museum or even like a series of pro bono workshops, you can do that. And it's a way for you to recuperate some of your funds through like tax benefits, because you do spend money on these things. Right. And so I didn't do all that because, again, I wasn't sophisticated enough, but I knew that I needed to have a brand. And so that was really important to me back then, is saying, okay, I have to establish this brand. So I came up with this whole concept called Inland Arts. I made a separate Facebook page. I started driving business to that page, but they were all tied into the Art Institute because they were pretty much funding the artists to come out and speak. Had a very small per diem, had a lot of artists coming out and doing it for like next to nothing, until I actually built up, quite a repertoire of workshops under my belt. While I was there, I think I lost count, over 100 plus workshops that I would do. I'd have artists come out on a monthly basis, bi-monthly, and they would always be free and they would always be open to the public. I had the benefit to work with some of the biggest in the industry, from like Neville Page to Kim Jung-gi, and I did some pretty amazing stuff.
That's his artwork on the background right there, right?
That is the artwork that he had created on the when we did our workshop. So when that school actually shut down, when I get to that part of the story, when they shut down, they actually gifted it to me. So that was like huge. They were like, pick one piece off the wall, and I want his stat, so please. And it was super special to me. So that's my pride and joy. I do collect other artists as well, but nothing to the scale of that. But nonetheless, like I had done stuff with Brainstorm. I had worked with Concept Design Academy. We kind of cross-promoted with Concept Design Academy, is a school out in Pasadena that was run by Kevin Chen. Back then, there was another school called Red Engine. We had done stuff with Red Engine. It was Steve Jung's school back in the day. So I was always cross-promoting other people's workshops. If I could find a way to like connect their workshop to our campus, I was just trying to make those connections. And so it so happened that I did a lot of stuff with, John and John Park and James Pack, who are the founders of Brainstorm. That's when I first met them, they were with Red Engine. And then up and beyond, they had just barely started the Brainstorm, and Glendale was first before Burbank, and it was a small little studio.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was tiny. It was a studio probably double the size of my office, and maybe had 8 to 10 students that it could accommodate comfortably, and that was the school. And then they grew to the Burbank, and during that time, it was like I knew who we were as the production design school. So when I had students that would come through and they were like gifted phenomenally art, drawing or talent wise, I would try to connect them to outside schools like that, because I'm like, hey, dude, you can come here, but you're going to learn 3D modeling. Like, this isn't going to be drawing. You're not going to be, pushing pixels like you want to do in the sense that you wanted to. But understand this is a part of the process and whatnot. So I would try to connect artists with those types of schools. And so I did a lot of workshops for John and James. And, like I said, the school, I stayed there for quite some time. And I got a call one morning, and the writing's on the wall. You could see some of the stuff that was happening with some of the other campuses, and you kind of get a feel like, hey, this is like a sinking Titanic, but you kind of don't know where you're at on the boat. Like, hey, is it time to jump ship yet? Right. And I was there pretty much to about the end, and they called us in an office and just was like, one day, like, you don't have a job anymore. Like, it was as simple as that. Like, no 30-day notice, no anything. It's like literally pack your boxes. You've been with us for over 19 years or whatever the time was, 18 years at the time, I think. And they said you literally don't have a job with us anymore. And so I think I took to socials at that time. I wrote on Facebook something to the effect of like, hey, it was a good run. Thank you, everyone. And I was kind of vague, on Vague Book. I did it kind of on purpose, but people started hitting me up, and I'm like, hey, what's going on? And I had a lot of support from the community that I had helped to support, came back to help to support me, which was really, really important. And I'm telling you, it meant a lot because I landed on my feet so quickly. I had some opportunities that really presented themselves, and I had to make some decisions at that time. And one of the opportunities was to join Brainstorm, but they wanted me to start a branch of Brainstorm in the Inland Empire. And so I was like, okay, well, what's the ask, what's involved? And, everything made sense, in terms of like where I was coming from. And it was like, you have this weird curves in your life. And it was one of those curves that I had to make a decision. And I had an opportunity to work for a studio, doing something in production, not doing design, but being a producer. And I made a decision not to do that. It was in downtown LA, and I think I made the right decision. And I started Brainstorm Inland, and we started that
Why
campus.
is that?
Yeah, so that
Why
was in
didn't you
Rancho.
like it?
Well, I'm sorry.
Why didn't you like it?
In terms of the production,
Yeah.
wanting to go into that. Well, I had talked to a couple of friends of mine that were like, pretty well established. They kind of knew the studio that I was looking at, and they're like, "Look, dude, they're going to tell you it's a 40-hour week. You're going to work 60 hours.
Right.
Oh, you're taking the train and you're like doing best case scenario and getting home on the train on time, but that's going to be a 4 to 5 hour commute for you daily, on the train." So I had to make some decisions. Like, did I really want to do that just to get my foot wet in the industry, or did I want to stay the course in education and something that I was passionate about, and take the chance to actually start something that was mine? I already had a brand established, but I was responsible whether the thing, was successful or not. And I luckily, made that decision, and we started Brainstorm Inland. It was, I don't know how many years ago. It was like 2019, I think. It's maybe even a little bit older than that. It was before COVID.
Right,
so it was 2 years before COVID, I think, or a year and a half before COVID. I want to say the end of 2019 we started. And I had some amazing faculty members because, again, relationships that I had built. So I was able to get, Armand Serrano to come out and join us, Vance Kovacs, Norris Lynn, Steve Hampton, and so all of these powerhouse teachers were coming back out to the IE to work with us. And the thing is, it was rough. The first year, like, we weren't making any money. We were barely breaking even. The Burbank campus was floating us. There were some tough conversations between John, James, and myself saying, "Hey, like, is this thing going to make it? We need you to make sure that you're, steering the ship right." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm trying everything." And like, literally, it's like, man, it was very, very frustrating that beginning year.
So you were pretty much in charge, because I used to know Brainstorm from, it was just a brick and mortar thing. Like, you could only take classes physically there. So John and James were in charge of the brick and mortar part of it, and then you were in charge of sort of like the online part of it?
No, I had a separate brick and mortar.
Oh,
So
okay.
we actually established another brick and mortar because they were at capacity at the Burbank location.
Right.
So they were teaching, 7 days a week, and they had 2 classroom space over there, and they just didn't have any more room to accommodate more students. So they had 2 options. They had either get a bigger building, for the Burbank, or they knew that I had an established network with the Inland Arts, and they wanted to start something out here. So they reached out to me, and that's what I did. So I started a brick and mortar. Man, we built the building from the ground up. Yeah, it was off of 6th and Haven in the city of Rancho Cucamonga, and it was an awesome place, man. I had, once we started getting the socials going, we had students coming from all over the place, from all over the United States to come attend with us. And it finally got to the place where it was successful, Jose. I kid you not. Like, I'm like, this is the first term that we're actually not going to be operating in the red. We're actually in the black. And I was like, this is great. Finally, it's the dividends are paying off. And then COVID happened. And COVID happened in an instance. It, changed our whole trajectory of things. John and James had been on record before that they didn't even want to do an online school or online. They preferred the brick and mortar method. But at that point in time, it was kind of sink or swim. We didn't have a choice. We were midterm. We had, just started a term, I think. So we were maybe like 2 to 3 weeks into it. And we had to make a decision. Like, are we going to just stop everything and like refund everybody's money, or are we going to port this thing online? So literally, I think we took about 72 hours to really just work nonstop around the clock to set up an online infrastructure. It was, not perfect at the time, but it was enough to service what we had. Right. And so we set up a school, and I was the one that was kind of in charge of that endeavor. So basically, we set up Brainstorm Online. And then, you fast forward, a year and a half of COVID, of the forced shutdowns and not being able to open up, and schools specifically having to have this amount of space. And it was just like, at that point in time, like, we had been paying for 2 buildings that we were not occupying, and the overhead on those buildings was insane, when you put both of those, and especially that they're not being occupied.
Because you still had to pay those during.
You had to pay that, no matter what. You had your leasing obligations and stuff, and you could have got out of paying your lease, and I guess that happened a little bit later on. But we were very fortunate that in one instance the lease was up, right around the time frame, a couple months into it. So when that lease came up in Burbank, we're like, hey, dude, we might not renew right away. And so we didn't. They had a tenant that wanted to come in there. And with the inland location, we ended up speaking to the property manager, and there was somebody who, really, really wanted the space. And so they let us out of our lease, at that time because of the COVID hardship. And so at that point in time, we went online. And then
quick question.
Yes.
Were you guys at least talking about going online prior to COVID, or just COVID just gave you that option? That's it.
COVID kicked us in our butt, and we weren't talking about it. Like we had talked about doing. It was funny because we had a couple production meetings where we were talking about introducing these storm classes. Now they're called flash classes, but they were storm classes, these little like small nature classes, and we were going to introduce those online just to test the market. And so we were kind of already dabbling and looking at like GoTo and Zoom for those classes. And that was something that I was like heading up to. John was, pretty excited about the opportunity for like these little short burst classes. And for me with like the education, it was like, I like the idea of the storm or the flash classes because they were short in nature and they're very inexpensive, compared to a school. You get 5 weeks, 10 hours of live interaction with an instructor, but it's just micro bursts of information where it's like, it's action packed right to the point. This is what we're focusing on. And it's like $155 for 10 hours. And like I said, 5 weeks of that. So for me, I was pretty excited about it. And we ended up, having to do online because of COVID. And the rest has kind of been history. We talked about, possibly opening up a brick and mortar again, and that might happen in the future. We're not closed off to it. But what happened is, I think in that first 2 years or a year and a half that COVID was going on, people from around the world that had wanted to take classes with us, but couldn't relocate because of visa issues or financially couldn't just, get up and go to LA, now have access to take classes with us. And so we had a student community that grew quite a bit. And there was no way, and there's still no way in hell that I'm going to ever yank the rug out from underneath the students that came and studied with us and that are studying with us today to continue with us. So it broadened the scope. We have instructors from all over the world. I had you in Texas. I had, TV Choi in Korea. I had, Kofi Ofasu in Ghana. I have Oliver Beck in Dubai right now. So I have teachers in pockets of all over the world that are teaching with us that we wouldn't have had access to. So I love online. I love the fact that there is a one-on-one live component to what we do. We don't do the recording and play it out as a video. It's a one-on-one type of situation. Is it ideal or perfect? No, but neither was on ground. We still had, students that didn't matriculate or didn't do their homework. There's no difference of that. The big thing is, our online community has grown quite a bit. And so we'll remain online. If we end up doing a brick and mortar, we'll still have an online component. But as of right now, it's Brainstorm online, 100% online. So, and with John and James and myself, we had to really kind of go back to the drawing board and restructure the deal and agreement that we have. And I'm happy to say that I'm 1/3 partner now through the entire organization.
Awesome.
So
that's awesome, man.
It's been a crazy ride. So that's kind of my backstory. There's a lot of stuff I'm sure I'm omitting, or even people that have kind of helped along the way, but it's been interesting, man.
Man, there's so many details that I didn't know, because I knew Brainstorm when it was like a brick and mortar, because when I was in Puerto Rico freelancing, one of my goals was to, I always wanted to take either a workshop or a convention to go once a year type thing, just as my development, because that's all I could pay for. And Brainstorm was one of those. And but I always wanted the online component, because the accessibility of that is just huge right now. Today is the best, easiest way to earn that, to get that information to become an artist.
Oh yeah, there's no secrets, man. There's no gatekeeping. Nobody's keeping anybody out from YouTube tutorials. One of our teachers, Cynics, he's big on free content. As a matter of fact, that's why I came to you, man. I remember seeing your art stations, and I'd see some of the videos and the information you were presenting. I'm like, dude, you're kicking ass. You're putting out great content for people. There was the chessboard pieces, and I'm like, I have to reach out to this guy. I love his work and really want to connect with him. And again, knowing that we had some mutual friends and just thankful that you were open to receive my call and my inquiry. And again, very thankful for what you did for us too, because you were an integral part of us, specifically even just building up Blender into our program and introducing that. Now we have a whole 3D division that we're trying to rise up and incorporate that more so into what we're doing to arm students better.
And another reason why I wanted to interview also is because like I think a lot of artists that that get into you guys' program or see any, like they don't see you as part of the big deal dealing with all this stuff. They mostly see the instructors or the artists, type thing.
Yeah.
Which I understand, but it's good for people to know everything that happens sort of like in the back end of things, because it does require a lot. And like I'm almost wondering, which I wanted to ask you, like if you were at your early 20s and you had Brainstorm, would your life, went in a different direction?
Yeah, I most likely would have 100%.
Yeah, right.
Like I probably would have been, knee deep in, all the classes that they had, because they were affordable. And especially if, we're talking about, numbers back then, in comparison to like when an art school was, it would have been even cheaper than to attend those type of classes. So yeah, I would have been, all over that. Like I would have found ways to do that. But honestly, like I don't look back and say, hey, like I have regrets, and my path is different than anybody's path. It's like, and I don't mind being the person behind the scenes. It's okay. Like I don't do this. Like oddly enough, like I never did this for recognition. Like I would go to the workshops and I would sit like front row in the workshops just to like geek out and be in awe of like what I'm learning in this process. And so for me, like, it's a different trajectory. And I tell that to some of my students all the time. I have one of my lead admins, he's starting to get a lot of concept gigs, and he's finding himself like early stage burnout, not burnout per se, but he's like kind of getting frustrated with it. And I'm like, well, that's the industry. Like this is what we're prepping you for. And, he, is
that Big M?
I'm not, no names will be mentioned, but maybe. And so we talked about it. I'm like, hey, dude, like you always have a seat at the table here. He was my day one, dude. So like, when I opened up Inland, I knew Big Am or Amrit from when I had worked at the other college. And when I started Brainstorm Inland, I had to talk to his parents and say, hey, look, I'm going to bring your son over here. He was currently working at Home Depot. He was trying to finish up his degree at the school that was like sinking, and I was like, dude, get out of there, because if you get out of there now, like you can get loan forgiveness, and I had to like literally talk his parents into saying like, hey, I'm telling your son to drop out of school and come with me over here. And he did. And he's been my right-hand cornerstone like since day one, dude. So we actually just gave him a very good, promotion in our marketing, and it felt really good to be able to offer that to him. So he definitely has a seat at the table. And yes, the conversation was between me and him, and saying like, look, there's so many different paths in this thing. Like people don't understand. It's not just concept art. It's not just illustration. If you are a good people person, but you understand the pipeline, go into being a producer. We need good producers out there that know the artist, but also understand the pipeline and the money situation, the behind the scenes on a project. So, for him, it was like, we've had this dialogue. He's not giving up on being a concept artist. So if anybody's out there, like you still hire him if you want to work with him. But, I think he realizes that, he'll always have a spot at Brainstorm as long as he wants it. So,
Cool. That's cool. Now just light up a little bit of the conversation. We know that you love fishing.
Yeah.
So if you had the power to orchestrate the perfect day of where to fish, what fish to get, who would cook it for you, like what would that look like?
Oh man, so like, so yes, I love to fish. Gosh, perfect day, like it's so weird. Like I can't explain it, but like fishing is an adventure, right? So like every time you go out on the water, like there's something new. So whether you're going to Mexico and you're fishing offshore where you're, 80 miles offshore and you can't see a lick of land, and, you're in the middle of the ocean and it's just a bright sunny day and tuna's foaming around you. Like that's a good experience. And I've had that. I've been down in Mexico and had marlin jumping out of the water and caught those, so for me, like, I don't know what that is, because again, I think there's so much more to be had in fishing that I haven't done yet. And like places that I want to experience. Like I want to go up to Alaska and I want to go fish up there for salmon and halibut. I want to go to Florida and fish off of Florida. I want to go to Costa Rica. Like there's a lot of places I want to go for fishing. And that's kind of one of my goals. I started last year saying I'm going to do a fishing vacation, is try to squeeze one in every couple of years where I can go somewhere exotic and get some fishing in. But the perfect day, man, is just it's being out on the water. Fishing is a blessing. Like when you catch a fish, it's a cool thing. I don't ever go out with the expectation of catching a fish. I do catch fish, but it's not like it's if I come home and I don't catch a fish, I still had a beautiful day on the water. I still had fun. And it's like I think in a past life, literally I was a pirate or I was on a boat somewhere. I don't know, but there's a peace that I get when I'm in the ocean that I can't quantify. I can't explain it. So for me, it's being out on the ocean. The weather's nice. The ocean's nice. Those are the two things that you want. You want nice weather and you want nice ocean, and good fishing is a subset. It was funny because I took James out fishing with us. We went out, I think it was yesterday or 2 years ago. I took him out on his first tuna trip. And we got into them. Like it was crazy. Like we caught Dorado, we caught tuna. And it was like 5 of us on my friend's boat, and we were pulling in, big, 90-pound fish over the boat. And I had to explain to him, like, hey man, it's not always like this, because he was all excited. He's like, damn, it's so badass. I'm like, bro, it's not always like this. You have to trust me. There's days we go out there and it's like a 16-hour whale watching day, like where we're just cruising around on the ocean. But for me, a perfect day of fishing is, weather has to be beautiful, water has to be beautiful, and then we catch some fish, whatever that is.
You talk about it the same way I talk about horses. Like we say, there's no time wasted when you're on the saddle. Like it doesn't matter if it's raining or where you're, as long as you're on the saddle, you're fine.
It's your peaceful zone, right? It's your peaceful place, man. And I don't know how that came about. I mean, I used to fish with my dad like a lot when I was a kid. We used to do like freshwater fishing. So maybe it's some of that. Like I remember going out and, he would say, don't talk because you'll scare the fish, which is a myth. Like you don't scare the fish, but it was like his place to find peace. And I think, it almost forced me into being meditative and finding peace back then. And so I think some of that carried into it. And it's pretty weird. But I've had some pretty awesome times fishing, some pretty scary times on the ocean.
Yeah.
We get back and you're like really thankful to be alive. 13-foot swells, and it's out of nowhere. Like it's scary but fun.
Crazy. Yeah. And I've never been fishing to that magnitude. Like I've only been fishing like probably once in my life on a little river.
So dude, you're coming fishing with me, man. Like when you come out here, we're going fishing. You just got to make sure you take seasick medicine if you've never been that, because seasickness will wreck your whole business if you're not familiar to the ocean. Yeah. If you get sick, it'll just wreck your whole day. But if you take Dramamine or a little Dramamine the night before, or some sort of medicine the night before, and then in the morning before you go, you should be fine. But if you do that, like, don't worry about it. We'll get you on fish. I'll teach you how to fish. Awesome. If you've been to California, Southern California, let me know. And we'll carve away some time, man. Southern California happens to be one of the best places in the world to fish. I mean, we have San Diego and Mexico. We have Baja Peninsula. We have everything right within our reach. I mean, I can get down into Mexican waters within like 3 hours, and I'm into Mexican waters, on a boat. If I drive down to San Diego and I get on the boats, like literally within about an hour, you're crossing over to international waters, and it's world famous tuna fishing for bluefin, yellowfin tuna. We've been getting Dorado or mahi-mahi. Like it's the place to be for the type of fishing I like to do, the pelagic fishing. So
that's cool. That's cool, man. A fun question here, real quick. So what would you do if I give you, or what if I just put on your table $1,000? What do you do with that $1,000 right now?
$1,000, you said?
Yeah. What would you do with that $1,000?
That's a tough one, man. $1,000. So I think $1,000, like I'm probably going to put it in some sort of bank account first. I'm going to just not necessarily go out and buy something like crazy and frivolous. And then really I'm looking to invest in things. So like, how can I grow that $1,000? Is there a way I can put that $1,000 towards something where money's making money? And that's the thing that I would look for. Whether that's buying a fishing pole that I found on OfferUp, and I know that I could sell it for like double because the values wise. Yep. So I'd find a way to invest. I think that's what I would do, to be honest with you. But don't put $1,000 on my desk. I'm good. You hang on to that, brother. I appreciate it.
No, I always like to get people's perspective on what they would do with that kind of money.
I'm a saver, man. Like I believe in saving, dude. Like I don't know why, but I mean, I think it's because I am like a sole provider, like for my family. So like I have a wife and 2 kids, and we made a decision early on when my first child was born that my wife was going to stay home because she wanted to, and she wanted to help kind of be there and bringing up our children. And so we lived really tight financially, because of that. And I'm not saying because of that, but it didn't help the situation. Having dual incomes back then could have really probably changed the trajectory of us. But like I said, I've always provided. There's always been, roof over our head and, food in the pantry and electricity on. So, and I think a lot of that comes from, also saving, just trying to save.
Yeah. How do you, because, how do you approach the sort of like the business financial side of things as an artist? Because I usually consider an artist, even though you don't work for like a company, like a concept artist or anything like that.
Right.
But how does that look like in your day to day, like dealing with Brainstorm and the business side of things with the artist side of things?
Well, so the business side of things is, it's what has to get done, right? So like everything that we do is in support of the students. And so I look at that as, yes, it's business, but it's also much more than that, because it's like, it sounds corny, but like you have to love the shit you do.
Of course.
Like you really do, like wholeheartedly. So like this is a school. Like I provide a platform. I connect awesome teachers with awesome students. And like I pinch myself sometimes and saying like, God damn, like this is what I'm really doing. So it's crazy. But, in terms of like the day to day, like I have, tasks just like anybody else that has to get done. I do prep for the current term. So, my role and capacity within Brainstorm is like everything that you can imagine that would be administrative outside of just the accounting. A lot of that falls on my shoulders. So if you email info@brainstormschool.com, I'm probably the non-grammatically correct person that's typing back to you. I try to be responsive as possible. I set up, an admin team. I manage our admins that help to manage the classes. I set up the schedules. I do hiring of instructors. I help onboard them by looking at curriculums and making adjustments and tweaking curriculums. Looking at just class management and basically structuring the program. So there's quite a bit to be done. Like right now, we're getting ready to start a term on January 22nd. So I'm finding that, today was, setting up meetings and Discords, working with the admins to set up the Discord room, and then setting up all the virtual classrooms and building the admin schedule. And then, the next thing I'll be emailing out invites to the instructors and the admins to their classes, and then doing the same for the students. So for me, there's certain things that are very pressing importance. So the stuff that's coming up now, I look at the priority list. I'm not as organized as James. Like you go to James's house, he's very organized. He's got Post-it notes everywhere, and he's like, he visually maps everything out. I don't do that. That's the artist part of me where I'm kind of like creative, but I know what needs to get done. And so this thing right here, I would be dead without it, but my cell phone basically helps me to manage my day. Like, I put my calendar on there, and if I have meetings, like I had this meeting today, I had a meeting with our moderators for our Discord earlier tomorrow, or earlier today. Tomorrow I have, a couple meetings scheduled that are pretty important. We're doing a technology walkthrough with one of our new teachers. I'm doing something with the Texas Workforce Commission. So I get governmental agencies that'll contact me sometimes that want to work with us. I'm responsible for setting up workshops and guest speaking events outside of Brainstorm. So we went to Toronto a few weeks back. I went to Mexico City last year. I'm planning a very large 2-day in-person workshop in April. It's already, the venue's already secured. We already have all the artists secured. We're going to start promoting it probably in about a week from now. But
so we're getting the first dibs now?
Yeah, you get first dibs, man. We're breaking the news here that we have a 2-day in-person Brainstorm workshop that's going to be absolutely awesome. Like we're going to make the ticket price, very, very affordable. You can come and enjoy both days. And we have some amazing instructors from our school, and we have, some keynote speakers that are going to be there as well. Probably about anywhere from 8 to 10 artists within the 2 days, and a mixer that we're doing the evening. So I plan that. I'm planning GDC. We're going up to Game Developers Conference. Right. So I'm handling all the booth stuff, all the accommodations in terms of AV stuff. So I tack things as they come up, and I'm like, hey, this is what's on my radar, and I just put them on my calendar, and I deal with them. And then constantly on the emails. So like, again, I hate when people don't respond to my emails. So it's like I try to respond to emails as quickly as possible. So I am literally like kind of neurotic, where I wake up in the morning and it's the first thing I check. Or then sometimes I wake up at like 4 o'clock in the morning because I couldn't sleep, and I'm like, I pick up my phone, I look, I'm like, damn it, there's email, and I'm going to respond. And so I like to be real time as possible on the emails. If you don't get a response from our email server, it's because our email server is down. We had 2 times this month where the server shut down, and we had no idea. And so I went like 3 days one time without getting or sending.
Like,
or
what is happening? Nothing is happening.
By the 3rd day, I was like, dude, nobody wants to talk. I'm feeling bummed. But I ended up realizing there was a problem. And then I was like, oh, God forbid, like people reached out to us and they weren't able to get a hold of us during that time. I hope they were persistent to keep reaching out, because we're not blowing anybody off. We try to get back to people as much as possible. Yeah. And we're not perfect, man. We again, we're growing. We learn as a school. Like I said, our mission statement is pretty much, in support of our students. Anything that we can do to help bridge that gap between student and industry. We do have art of business classes, that are, we have one series. We're going to be launching a 2nd series of that art and business. We're trying to do a connection this year where we're going to do a lot more bridging the gap between some of our industry contacts into students that are like advanced portfolio or mentorship students. So that way they actually have like not a carrot dangling, but they have, something that they're working towards in terms of making that actual connection to the industry, where we're not like, hey, you're prepped, you're ready to go. We're actually bringing people to the doorstep. So that's a lot of fun initiatives that are on my plate this year. We're just going to continue to grow and do the best that we can.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I really have Brainstorm really high in terms. I always recommend it because I think you guys are doing an amazing job with bringing content and education at pretty affordable in comparison to like most places out there. So I really appreciate that from you guys a lot.
Thank you, man. I wish there was more that we can do, in terms of like, cost, but it's like everything is, everybody's experienced it in terms of inflation and the way that the costs are going up on everything. We have pushed quite a bit for our scholarship plans. And so we have, scholarships. And one of the things that I rolled out this term is a best of term scholarship. So this is new. We had a portfolio scholarship before you enter, but now we have about 6 students per term that get nominated by their instructors. Awesome. And then we pick out of those nominations 6 students to get a free class the next term. So if you come into your class and you're kicking ass and you're doing really well, we're going to continue to reward you to keep going through the process.
That's dope. That's dope.
So,
that's really cool. Last serious question.
Yes.
So if you think back, because I think your story is amazing. So thank you for sharing that. What would be like the greatest sacrifice that you have made in order for you to like be where you're at? Like you can think of like maybe people don't know about it.
Yeah, that's almost kind of hits the heart, like honestly, like it's you don't think about it, but like I told you that I made some decisions with my wife early on. Yeah. That she was going to stay home with the kids and I was going to work, and providing for a family of 3, 4 total. It takes a lot of work, and I remember that I would work, anywhere from 50 to 60 hours a week. There was days that when I was working with that other college, I was working 7 days, straight. I worked an hour away from the home, so I had 2 hours on top of that. So you put overtime in the mix. You're working 11-hour days, and so I missed a lot of the, kind of growing up moments of my children. And I would try to be as present as possible when I'm here, but I also was doing those workshops and trying to build a brand for myself that was outside. And the deal was with my employers that I could do the workshops, but I would have to come in on the weekends to do the workshops, because that's when the campus wasn't being utilized and it wasn't taking away from my Monday through Friday job responsibilities. So I spent a lot of times on Saturdays or Sundays, at the school, where I probably should have been at home, where I wish I was. But at the same time, it's that sacrifice that afforded us the opportunity to be where I'm at now. And now I'm working from my cell phone, and my family probably wants me to get the hell out of the house, but I'm here all the time now. And, I think, going back to that, I wish I could have been a lot more present then, and it's a delicate balance. So I will tell anybody listening, don't sacrifice those things, find a way to carve out and make those things It's a beautiful relationship, my wife has with my children. And me and my children are close too, but they're definitely team mom. And I know, why, and I understand that. But at the same time, I think that when they get old enough and they understand, like,
Oh
hey, I
yeah.
made these sacrifices to take care of the
Oh, yeah.
family. But yeah, that's one of the ones for sure. Yeah, 100%. Like
That's
if I
awesome.
could go back in time, I'd say, just be a little bit more mindful in carving out those times.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, man.
Now, as I mentioned to you earlier, I'm gonna send you 3 pictures, but one
Okay.
at a time, and I just want you to give me your first response, like whatever comes into your mind, and they're all about you. The
Oh,
pictures.
that's
So,
scary. Okay. Oh Lord, dude. Man, you scrubbed my timeline, my dude. So this was early on again, working, we lived in the Inland Empire, and I was entering the Christmas Halloween costume at my work. And so Christmas was on the brink. I didn't do Halloween early, so a lot of times some of the Christmas decorations will hit the shelf before like Halloween even's there. So I just took advantage of that, and I made myself into a Christmas tree for a Halloween costume. So that is a Halloween costume. Those are presents around my feet, the trunk, and then I made
oh,
myself,
we
and it
see
actually
it.
lights
We
up. You
see
can't
it.
see it, but I put that together, and I did not win, but I did. I think I placed second in the Halloween costume. So yeah, that's
Pretty good.
that.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
All right. Second
I'm the
image.
happiest Christmas tree there. Okay, angry. Oh yeah, that's my dad, man. So my dad, he passed away around 9 years ago, and I shared these pictures of him when he was in the military. So he was a Marine, and
Wow.
he worked on airplanes. And so this is a picture of him when he was probably about like 19 or 20 years old, probably prior to going to Vietnam. But yeah,
Wow.
that's my dad. That's
That's awesome.
yeah,
That's an
miss
awesome
him.
picture.
Yeah, he was a fun guy. He was such a crazy sense of humor, man, and he was also injury prone. So like I'm willing to believe like when he was taking this picture, he
He's
probably
getting
fell
injured.
out and hurt himself somehow in this picture. He would always bang himself up, and yeah, this is probably the calm before the storm. The clown. Of my dad.
All right, last picture.
All right, let's see what we got. Oh yeah. This is my one of my personal bests. This was a
Yeah,
this is about 150-pound striped marlin.
150.
About 150 pounds. We didn't officially
Sheesh.
weigh it. That's what the pangalera was telling us. The guy who drives the boat. He was telling me it was about 150 pounds. It was very difficult to hold up right there. I mean,
I bet.
you can't see it, but like I literally dropped the thing like right after the picture because it was super heavy. But it was a 150-pound striped marlin, and it was my first marlin, and that was on my first fishing vacation trip that I took with a buddy. We went down to Cabo. It's amazing that if you go to Cabo in the right time of the year, it's like super cheap.
Yeah.
Airfare was like next to nothing. It was like
Wow.
a couple $100 round trip, and we were able to get like a pretty cheap hotel, and went down there and negotiated the boat rentals, and that was an experience of a lifetime because it was one of the biggest fish that I've caught to date. I know there's like bigger fish in the ocean, but that was my personal biggest fish, and it was pretty cool because normally, I know people catch and release those, and if I catch another marlin, I would catch and release it. Some people taxiderm him, but that actually, I took it back to the processor, and I brought all of the fish back to the hotel,
Oh,
and
really?
I gave it to all the hotel people, and their
Oh, that's
chefs
cool.
made some amazing food for us, and
Oh,
we took care of.
sweet.
Yeah, we took care of like the entire hotel staff and the kitchen staff, and it was pretty awesome. So yeah, that was a great experience. So
That's awesome. That's awesome.
sweet, man.
All right, Thomas, it's been a great pleasure talking with you. Really, really, really thank you for your time. And I have to say, congratulations on everything that you have accomplished and what you're doing for the art community and all that. So, telling you from an artist, we really, really appreciate it. And so, we just want to say thank you for your time.
Hey man, thank you for having me. And again, I was like a little shocked when you reached out to me because again, I'm not the run of the mill guest that you typically have.
Oh,
Because
no,
you guys are
man.
phenomenal artists. And Jose, I'm going to be a fan of what you do until you stop doing it, man. Like whether it's riding horses or making amazing tutorials or playing with your dog, man. Like you're one of the good ones, brother. And thank you so much for having me. And I look forward to seeing what you're doing with your mentorships and everything that's going along. So
Thank you.
let's stay in contact, brother. And wish you a great 2024. I'll talk to you
Thank you.
soon, brother.
Likewise, man. Thank you.
All right. Take care. Bye.